This is the Trek Betasso 45mm gravel bike tire. And in this video, you'll be getting my ride impressions, both for good and for not so good, of this, well, certainly aggressive and seemingly very tough gravel bike tire. Now, not that long ago, Trek Bontrager came out with a couple new gravel bike tires. There is the Betasso and the Girona. Now, the Betasso, when you look at the tread pattern on this, you can see it is a fairly aggressive tire as gravel bike tires go, where the Girona is very, very mild-mannered. If this is Superman, the Girona is Clark Kent. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to get on it, and they were nice enough to send me both a set of 45s and a set of 50s in the Betasso. And I've been riding it for a while, and we're going to talk about this tire, my pros and cons, so to speak, the good and the less than good. Before I do that, though, let's go to the Trek website and see what they say about the Betasso. The Betasso RSL GX TLR gravel tire. That is a mouthful. It comes in black wall, comes in a tan wall, comes in a 42, a 45, 50mm size, all 700C. It doesn't seem like we have any 650B mentioned here at all. What did they say about the tire? Let's go to the overview. It says, champion of the chunk. Derived from the loose and rugged trails of Colorado, Betasso RSL GX tires deliver ultra-aggressive performance for grip and durability in mixed and loose conditions. RSL GX construction provides an incredibly robust 60 TPI casing, in other words, threads per inch, paired with bead-to-bead and sub-tread puncture protection. So in other words, it's a fully belted tire for protection for cutting and damaging the tire. All right? While a gravel dual compound feature, so the rubber compound, firmer center, so harder rubber in the center to maintain straight line speed, and a medium density rubber shoulder knobs that bite when cornering. Okay, very good. What I'm hearing them say is this is a tough and durable tire for rough conditions. Fair enough. Now, when I look at the weights of the 45s, I see that Trek says 630 grams. I measured them, and I measured the Betasso in a 45 at 593 grams and 641 grams, which is kind of interesting because, you know, manufacturing tolerances of a tire, they're usually not that exact, although these are quite varied, actually. Not so much if you say 630 is what it should be, and I'm 593 and 641, I'm on either side of that. You say, well, it's not that far away, you know, quite a ways from 593, but that's 50 gram difference between the two tire samples I have. So 593 to 641, that's a big difference. I don't know if I remember seeing that much of a spread before between two sample tires, but it is what it is. Now, handling the Betassos, I noticed something interesting. First of all, it's a fairly it's a stiff, I mean, okay, look at the video. Look at the video here I shot. The tire actually kind of stands up on its own when you let it go, so to speak. Not that completely unusual, but just handling it and just kind of manipulating, it feels significant, okay? This is not a flippy floppy tire casing for sure. We'll see how that worked out for me, maybe not for the not so good. However, here's the thing, right? Say you want to make a tire really tough and durable, that maybe you're in a situation where you damage tires a lot. Well, you can make a tire probably almost indestructible, but there is a cost to that. And so pity the poor tire manufacturer who's trying to make a tire that rides well, lasts well, doesn't cost a fortune, and isn't paper mache, right? So it's a tough balancing act. And for some people, well, this tough casing, as they advertise it, could be exactly what you're looking for. Well, more on that later. Mounting them up, they mounted up just fine with a compressor brick, tubeless, held air perfectly, never never nothing. Really, really good. And I never damaged one at all, although usually that's typical for me out here. I don't typically cut tires in any case. All right, so let's get to how they were to ride, because that's what you came here for, isn't it? So first the good, and then, well, the less than good. The good. Well, traction. There's a lot of traction in this tire. Here's the story. I'm coming down the dirt road and I'm fussing with the camera. I got it mounted to the front of the bike, and I don't remember what I was trying to do. Turn it off. Battery came loose. I don't know, something, right? So I'm frustrated. I'm on the gravel bike. I'm slowing to a stop, and I grab the brakes pretty hard. Now, I kind of expected to slide-ish to a stop. I've got a foot clipped out. I'm getting time, you know, the timing of that, right? When you're going to lean forward and when you feel that your bike has come to a stop. And I stopped like a couple feet shorter than I expected to. It was like dragging an anchor when I grabbed the brakes hard with this tire. It's got a lot of traction. And so that definitely off-road, it definitely has that in spades. On the road, surprisingly, rolls actually really quite well. I went from 25, 30 to 35 pounds. It's kind of my normal range. And at 35 pounds, I'd go out and do some little roadie rides on the bike path, go out and just cruise to watch Christmas lights or go to coffee, you know, kind of thing you might do, just run around town. And really, I had no complaints at all with the Betasso. Really not bad at all. One thing I did notice right away when I got on it, which not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but it's a thing. It's a very peaky tire. Now, it looks really round here, kind of, doesn't it, right? And I tried to show the peakiness on camera. It just doesn't come out. But it's got a little bit of this kind of a shape. And I noticed immediately when I got on the tire on the street in front of my house, it felt almost floppy, like the front end wanted to just kind of come over. And so it's coming off center very quickly. And that trait could be good or could be bad off-road, depending what you're looking for. And after a while, well, that feeling kind of went away and I just got used to it. But anyway, some of the more flatter top tires that I've used recently are much more linear. However, they also feel slower when you're turning, and maybe if you want something more agile, in a big tire, you know, as you go to 45s and 50s, it slows the response of your gravel bike down. And this tire actually turned in, you know, kind of quick. Not bad. Performance in sand, I'd say, is just average, not particularly great, but not terrible either. Like I said, climbing traction, cornering traction, it's pretty high. I never felt like I was pushing this tire at its limits. And if I was pushing this tire at its limits, I'd probably be terrified. So nope, no complaints there. All right, the less than good of the Betasso. And there's two things really I think I noticed. The ride quality of this tire is certainly firm. There's that word, harsh. I was noticing as I was riding, it just seemed like, you know, I felt like I had more air in my tires than I did, which is usually kind of a tip off that I either need to drop tire pressure for this tire, or it's just riding firmer than the other tires I've been using, who are pretty much the same weight, the same size, the same intent, etc. Okay, and I thought, let's try something. So to make sure I wasn't fooling myself, right, on the Betassos, little 1 hour test loop near my house. And it's a couple miles of pavement to a moderate, you know, just typical dirt road, to some fairly techy little single track that's tight, twisty, rocky, with some little runouts and sand and stuff. Kind of a little bit of everything. Then you ride the pavement back home. 25 pounds in the Betassos. Any lower than that, I'm going to start taking this to the rim on the rocks on that trail. So that's about as low as I could get away with at my 180 some pounds. All right. The other thing I noticed happening with the Betasso, maybe it's the peaky shape, maybe it's the stiffer casing, but it seemed like it pinged around a lot on the rocks on that trail, to the point where I was really struggling to feel confident about just being on my line. And I ended up actually slowing down quite a bit. Now, oddly enough, a couple days before, there's a small single track I dive onto at a pretty good clip. I do this all the time on the gravel bike. On this tire, on that trail, which is not a smooth trail, it's tight, windy, and rough and sandy, I set a PR. So I don't know, go figure. But anyway, really not too impressed with how it's riding. It still feels pretty rough, and said, okay, but is it me? So I come back home, swap tires to the next set of tires that I'm going to be using. Same size tire I've used before a long time ago, and thought I remembered it riding pretty nice at 25 pounds. Well, so I come back home, I swapped the tires. I said, I'm rolling out. I'm immediately struck with how much nicer it's riding. And throughout the whole trail, I was going faster with more confidence on the other tire. Those are the two things about the Betasso that I did not particularly care for. The ride quality I felt was a little harsh, and I didn't really care for the way it steered through the rocks. So those two things kind of, for me, the Betasso, not a particularly compelling tire. But let's wrap it up and put some perspective to this, shall we? Sometimes when you're reviewing something, or you're getting your impressions of something, because this is really more an impression than a review. And here's why I say that. A review, I'd want to have used this tire through all the kinds of conditions I might see and ride it for 2 or 3 seasons at least, right? That's a review. This is impressions. Just thought I'd say that. All right. Sometimes when you're checking something out, you end up with thinking it's not very good, but really what you're doing is maybe using it like a fish out of water. So could there be a better scenario where I'd be using a Betasso? I think there is. First of all, if I really, really cared about durability of a tire, in other words, if I'm in a situation where damaging tires is likely, or maybe I'm taking it into a very, very difficult, long type of adventure where a fragile tire is not my friend no matter how nice it rides, okay? There could be that. Now, you know they make this Betasso in a 50mm tire. Well, between the knob, the traction, and what I'm assuming is a very durable tire based on what they say and how it feels in my hand, well, that could be a tire that you go on a multi-day event, adventure race or whatever, backpacking, and you don't worry as much about hurting your tire. There's a lot of peace of mind in that. Secondly, for perspective, I kind of feel, honestly, if I lived where the soil was moister and the trails were narrow, and I think of places like the Pacific Northwest or maybe back east where you're diving in around the trees, between the quick steering response and the open knobs of this tire, well, I think maybe the Betasso there, I know they say it's a rough and rugged Colorado tire, but I do wonder if maybe in that situation, this wouldn't be a great tire to ride. Well, all right, my impressions on the Trek Betasso. Thanks to Trek for sending these out to me at no cost. I do appreciate it. And even though for me, it wasn't a compelling tire, that doesn't mean for the right person, for the right use, it isn't exactly the tire you're looking for. And well, that's up to you to decide. All right, you guys have a great week and or weekend. And as always, you go ride your bikes.